Good evening. Welcome to New Life Assembly of God. This is our last in a series called Grace for the Afflicted, and we are really excited that you have joined us tonight. I myself do live with some mental health conditions. I live with PTSD, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and anxiety. And I have three wonderful friends up here who also live with some mental health conditions. And tonight we are going to spend the next 55 minutes talking a little bit about what it's like to live with mental health conditions, some of the ways that some of the rhythms that we put into our lives to help us be healthy, and ways that people have supported us. So we appreciate you being with us, and if you will just bow your heads, I'm going to start us in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time, and we thank you for the way that you surround us with people to love us and support us, and we thank you for giving us your Son to teach us how to love one another sacrificially. Lord, I just pray that you will use all three of these people up here to speak hope and give them strength to share courageously the path that they've been on. And Lord, open our ears to hear from them and to learn from them. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to start with Melanie because she's sitting closest to me. Yes, she picked the wrong spot. So if you will tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been coming to New Life Assembly of God, what keeps you coming, and as much as you would like to share about the mental health struggles that you live with.
My name is Melanie, as she said, and I have been coming to New Life since 2009. I struggle with multiple mental health issues, depression, PTSD, and there is growing awareness of PTSD being more complex for some people. The DSM does not have complex PTSD as a diagnosis, but that is the one that most assuredly fits everything that I struggle with. Also, a lot of the things that I struggle with you can also find as you read up on adult children of alcoholics. Some of the things I've been delivered of through treatment is nightmares, insomnia, and suicidal ideations. But I still struggle with emotional flashbacks, and I guess that's good enough.
Very good. Thanks, Melanie. Bill, if you will provide the same information, share as much as you would like or as little as you would like about your mental health struggles, how long you've been coming to this church, and what keeps you coming.
Well, I've been coming to New Life since 2017. Actually, this month makes 4 years that I've been coming to New Life, and I don't know. I came to New Life. I checked out Celebrate Recovery one night at New Life, and I was so impressed with the Celebrate Recovery here at New Life that I happened to be dating one of the ladies that was coming to New Life at the time, and I attended Sunday service with her that following Sunday, and I've been coming back ever since. I fell in love with this church, and I fell in love with the congregation. I fell in love with the people here, and I've always been treated well here, and I've been able to share my mental health struggles, not just my mental health struggles, but my struggle with addiction and everything else with this church, and I've always been accepted with open arms, and that's kept me coming back. As far as my mental health struggles, I live with, notice I say I live with, I no longer struggle with, I live with schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder, it's sort of like, it's a form of schizophrenia. It's sort of like bipolar. I go to the same extremes that a bipolar person goes through, but when I get way up here, I'm really happy like everybody else, but when I get way down here, I become delusional. And my mind leaves reality. And I still struggle with keeping my mind in reality, in all actuality. But I've been able to teach myself over the years. I've been able to teach myself what is reality. You know, I can have those crazy thoughts today and think to myself, Bill, you know that's not real, and let it go at that. I've learned to divert my mind, but you know, I've had some pretty crazy delusions throughout the years. Back in 2000, I went through the worst psychotic episode of my life. I believed I was the second coming of Christ, and you know, because of that, I've always sought God, but I've always had to take religion in small doses. And for years and years and years, I had to take religion in small doses. I couldn't read the Bible for very long at all. I couldn't listen to Christian music very long at all, or my mind would leave reality. But about 5-6 years ago, I made it a goal of mine that I was going to become like everybody else. I was going to get myself to where I could handle religious thoughts on a regular basis. And I started attending church on a regular basis. I listen to Caleb all the time. You know, I take part in Christian groups. Like I mentioned, I go to Celebrate Recovery, and I'm also a part of what we call the TGIF group here at New Life. It's a group of men that meet on Friday mornings at 6:30 in the morning, and I've really connected with the people in this church, and I've learned for myself that it's important for me to have everybody around me know exactly what's going on with me and my mental health, because someday I may come in here and I may not be in my right frame of mind, and I need somebody to recognize that so that I can get the help that I need. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Bill. Kevin, can you provide the same information for us?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kevin, and my wife and I started coming here back in September of last year. We stepped down from pastoring in Fostoria, I think it was in February or March or whenever it was. We started coming here. It was actually September of 19. We came here in September 20 when we moved from Fostoria to Findlay. And so we've been here for 10 years. She's a transplant from Southern California. I was born and raised in El Paso and Maryland, and ended up, the Marine Corps gave me a free trip overseas and then back over to the 29 Palms. If anybody's ever heard of that, you can type it in the computer and be totally shocked where we were living. But that's where she was, and it's been quite a ride. And if you look back over my history, all the things that I've been through, I have the perfect storm diagnosis. I have bipolar 2, rapid cycling, with ADHD. And when those two hit together on the high end, there's been several times that we have received, through my own actions, new cars, and things that are definitely without approval from the War Department. She's been bearing with me for quite some time. I recognized my need for help with my mental health as I started to, she became a counselor. She's a clinical counselor, and started to share with me some things that I do, some actions that I have, some behaviors. I started to begin that journey of recognizing those switches, like Bill talks about, those shifts that happen that are easily recognizable now in my own life. I will warn you, before I took I said yes to Nicole to do this. Well, I said yes, and then last Friday, the doctors decided to change my medication completely. So I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but we're here, and so I wrote some things down so that we can stay on track. But I'm glad to be here. I do have quite a bit of help from my wife and my family, who recognize my issues that I have. So I hope I can help someone else or some other families that are dealing with the same thing, because it's a wild ride.
Thanks, Kevin. So that was a good transition into the next question. Did I move forward too far? Sorry. So the next question is looking for a little bit of information about what a bad day looks like for you. And Kevin, I'm going to start with you because you did share a little bit already about some car purchases and some of those types of things. If you will expand on that a little bit and maybe even share a little bit about what the last few days have been like for you in this medication change.
One of the ways I look at how my mental health works, it's a lot like a roller coaster all the time. And it's also like you're staring at every shiny object that you see. And I call it shiny object syndrome because even driving down the road, I'll lose focus on driving because I have this fixation of finding deer in the woods. I don't know if anybody else has that, but I constantly am looking and I'll see something that attracts my attention. And this is throughout my day. I will have that constant cycling and the constant attention deficit problem that I have. A bad day for me is when I get up in the morning. If I don't pick something to focus on, we're going to have a wild ride. And it's just the end of the story right there. And I cannot get projects done. I don't know how many people out there can raise their hand and say you have a couple projects in the works they haven't gotten finished. Okay, every single one of my projects is unfinished. Or I purchased everything I needed for it, and then I sold it as I cycled down. Just recently, probably last year, I bought an entire reloading setup for making bullets. I mean, everything. I was like, let's do it, man. We're going to make bullets. And about a year later, it was all still in the boxes. And I just recently sold it for half price because I have to move on to my next hobby. So the way I cycle is the big cycles, the daily cycles, and the ADHD is just like chasing squirrels all day. The reason I went to the doctor, I've been taking one medication for a few years that has just made me kind of flatline mostly. We hired a new person at our business, and she's very, very blunt, and she works in the office with me. We're the business team. She's our billing director. And after a day, she came to me and said, you need to go to the doctor. You need to get something fixed because, she's fun. She's not saying that mean. She's just saying, I can't concentrate around you. And I said, well, I can't concentrate ever. So I did go to the doctor last Friday, and they made a huge shift in my medication. So that transition has been horrible. The headaches, all that stuff. I don't know if you've ever been on any type of medication for a long period of time, and then you're coming off of it. They try to wean you off of it, and it's always a bad transition. So this past weekend was I'm surprised I made it through without running off, to do something stupid. But we're feeling a lot better now. Doing the next shift down on medication and hopefully getting onto a new medication here shortly. But that whole transition time, if you are a caregiver or if you're a family member of somebody that's going through that kind of change, you have to be very patient. Techie is definitely a very patient woman. I say I've been in counseling for 23 years. That's how long we've been married. And she's patient with me. And she's learned how to help me and direct because she knows she can't grab on and point me in the direction. She can definitely shepherd me the way I need to be handled. But yeah, it's definitely it's trying, but you can work with it as long as we're all recognizing what's going on.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And along the lines of medication, another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes we forget to take our medicine. We don't do that on purpose. An example for me is Monday. I haven't forgotten to take my medicine in probably 2 or 3 months, but Monday I needed to go to the grocery store after the gym, which meant that my morning routine changed, and I forgot to take my medicine. And I still don't feel good yet. Like it still is not back in my rhythm yet. And so my blood pressure's out of whack. I don't take blood pressure medicine, but my blood pressure, my body temperature, my breathing, everything is different because of that one thing on Monday. And so if you are a caregiver or love someone who takes medicine, I would just encourage you to be really kind, when they forget to take their medicine because they didn't mean to forget to take it. Now, sometimes, depending on what it is we struggle with, sometimes we quit taking it on purpose because we're sick of the side effects. That requires a different kind of love. Let me know and I can help you with that or get you connected to someone who can help you with that because that is a little bit different. Bill, how about for you? Tell us a little bit more about what a bad day looks like for you. You have shared a little bit, but tell us a little bit more.
Currently, a bad day for me is racing thoughts. Having so many thoughts running through my head that it's all I can do just to reach out and grab one. And I have to be careful because oftentimes I'll reach out and grab one and it's not a thought that I need to be having. So it's important for me to realize that I need to redirect my mind, tell myself that the thoughts that I'm having are either not real or just not good in general. And so, in the past, I have reached out and grabbed those thoughts and became very delusional, ended up in a psychotic episode. Now, my family has learned how to pay attention to it. My family pays attention to my Facebook. You can tell what's going on in my mind by the type of rants I'm on Facebook. and my family pays attention to my Facebook, and if it seems like my thoughts are starting to get too grandiose or something like that, they may say something to me and bring to my attention that I might want to dial it down some. So, but it can be very difficult having mental illness that my mind is constantly at war with itself. Even when I look like I'm doing good, I guarantee you my mind's fighting itself on something, and my mind's constantly at war with itself. So I have to. The last 10 years I've done well. Well, it's actually been 11 years. I came into recovery from addiction 11 years ago, and since I got clean and started working the 12 steps and 12-step programs, my mental health has gone through the roof, as in it's gotten a lot better. But even though I can decipher what reality is pretty well today, I still have to do that on a regular basis. So that's about all I got.
Thanks, Bill. Melanie, how about for you? What does one of your bad days look like?
It's really hard for me to describe because most of it happens behind closed doors where nobody sees. But there are a lot of triggers out there, and when something hits me, it can bring up a lot of memories if it's something that's similar to something that's happened to me in the past. And then usually what will happen is I will start crying. And then I will cry because I'm crying, and then I will cry because I can't stop crying. And then they get this voice going in my head telling me what a loser I am and all of the other things that a very, very hateful person would say to someone. And it's usually something I can't stop until I go to bed and sleep. On really bad days, when I wake up in the morning, I'm still crying. That doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does. And I have not gotten the strength yet to ask for help during these episodes. So that is probably a goal for me, but I'm not even sure what anyone would do to help me, because usually the only thing that I can do is go to bed.
Thanks, Melanie. So I don't know if you picked up on each one of them did identify some things that they know help them. And that is a great question that you can ask someone. If you know that they're struggling, ask them if they know. What is it that normally helps you? Now I will tell you, sometimes we don't know. When we're in the midst of it, we can't identify what it is. But there are some really good programs out there, short workbooks that you can do. That's called a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. There's other similar ones where when you are in a good frame of mind, you fill out this workbook and then you make sure your loved ones have copies of it or know where it is so that they know how to help you. For me, one of the best things you can do for me if I'm struggling is bring me a cup of coffee and find funny dog videos. That will almost always bring me out of where I am. I might be really mad at you at first when you do that because I know you're trying to bring me out of where I am, but it won't take long, usually 2 videos, and I'm laughing and then I'm starting to come out of it. So thank you guys for sharing. I know that that's some really vulnerable things to share. The next question, so we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the rhythms and routines in your life that help you to stay in a healthy space. And sometimes life changes us. Maybe our jobs change, circumstances in our life change that change those rhythms and routines. But tell us a little bit about what some of those things are that you know you can do that help you. We'll start with you, Melanie.
I try to get as much sleep, get enough sleep is one major thing that I can do. I've obviously taking the medications that I'm prescribed, and looking for other healthy ways to help my body do what it needs to do with vitamins and things. I have made it a habit to make sure I have one day a week where I don't have to go anywhere and I don't have to engage in any way. Unfortunately, at this time in my life, it's Sunday. Sorry, Pastor Dutch. But I am watching from home. I listen to teachings or the audio Bible at night when I fall asleep. I think that helps a lot with my insomnia and nightmares. Obviously, watching church online or coming and connecting in person in some way. And I regularly meet with friends, and helping people is also included, because when you are lifting someone else up, then God's speaking to you and saying, now why can't you see that for yourself? And then joining small groups is something else that I've been doing through the years.
Very good. Thanks, Melanie. How about you, Bill?
As I said earlier, I take part in 12-step recovery, and I've big part of my life is spent in the recovery community. You know, I stay plugged in. I stay plugged in with people all the time. It's important for me that I don't isolate to where I'm letting those thoughts bounce around inside my own head. If I'm around people, it gives me a chance to bounce my thoughts off somebody else and make sure that my thinking's right. I just, I've become a leader within the recovery community. I pick people up, take them to meetings and stuff. I help people with their own recovery. I actually about almost 8 years ago, I picked up a job with one of the mental health agencies around town. I don't want to say their name because I don't want anybody to think that my thoughts reflect their opinions or anything. But I picked up a job with one of the local mental health agency, the one that treated me for the last 15 years before that. And today I run a mental health, I run a supportive housing apartment complex for those with mental illness and or substance abuse issues. So my life is constantly wrapped around helping somebody else. I find that when I'm when I focus on other people rather than myself and my own thoughts, I'm able to stay on track a lot better than what I would if I was left out there on my own. That's the importance of the church to me. That I needed something besides 12-step recovery, and the church gave me that something extra that I needed. The 12-step recovery for the longest time wasn't enough for me, and now that I'm involved in church on a regular basis, I had that extra layer of protection that I always needed, and I stay plugged in, whether it's with the church or with 12-step recovery. I'm constantly staying plugged in with other people because, like I said, with the type of mental disorder that I have, it is important that I don't get isolated. I often say this about addiction, but I'll say it about schizoaffective disorder also. It's like a hungry lion. It gets me away from the herd, and it's going to eat me up. And I have to stay plugged into that herd all the time. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Bill. So one thing I want to make sure that you guys heard from both Melanie and Bill is they stay connected and plugged in to other people. So we need to be people that others can be plugged into, and we also need to be reaching out to other people, and they are helping other people. So they are staying connected with God personally, and then also connecting with other people that they can share the hope that they have found with. And that not only is what we were created for, but it also helps in their recovery journey. Okay, Kevin, how about you? What are some of the things that you include in your daily rhythms and routines to help you stay healthy?
I actually forgot the question.
That's what I thought.
And I was
That's why
looking.
I repeated it for
Can I
you.
tell you why? Because that beautiful pattern on that screen right there, I am completely drawn into that pattern. It looks like an octopus. It really does.
It is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool looking. Sorry. I had to learn that medicine's 50%, and the rest of it is you have to try to gain control of what's going on. One of the greatest things that happens now that is the most annoying thing that happens also, these two, it's hand in hand. The greatest thing that can happen to me to help me, and it's the most annoying thing, is when my wife or my family asks me, "What have you been doing?" And I hate that question. I don't want to give them an answer because someone sent me a puppy video, and now I spent the last 4 hours looking at puppy videos, and I don't have a good productive answer to give. So I hate that question, and they know I hate that question, but it's also something that brings me back to the reality that what have I been doing for these past 4, 6, 8 hours? Isolation is horrible for me. I cannot, it cannot be, for me at least, I have to be with people. I'm a very outgoing person. I'm very fun to hang out with, almost too fun, and then almost too descriptive in things that I talk about when it comes to trying to be funny, and it can be overwhelming. But yeah, being alone is not a good thing for me. But like I said, the rhythms, that kind of thing, I do not do calendars. I can't, it's hard to do schedules written down. I would go and I'd come into my phase where I want to organize everything in my life, and I'd grab a big desk calendar, and I'd get the app to send alerts and have all this stuff, and I'd sit down and look at it. I'm like, okay, day 1, here we go. And day 3, I'm like, why is this on my desk? Why am I looking at this? It's telling me too many things. I can't deal with it. So organization is a very, very hard thing for me, but having the family involved and asking me that question, that's the main thing that really helps me to realize that A, I've been either wasting time, or B, I have a really good answer that's productive, and I can tell them and then say, I told you I could do it, right? That's what we all try to do, so that's me.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, Bill, you get to answer the next question first. So the next question is in reference to scripture verses. So I asked everyone, I sent them the questions in advance. And then I asked them, are there any questions you don't want to answer and any questions that you're really excited about? And they were all really excited about the same question, But Bill was the first one to say he was really excited about it, so he gets to answer it first. So I asked them to tell us about a Bible verse or some scriptures that really speak to them, or maybe a character in the Bible that they refer to for strength or for peace or for joy.
Well, I have a couple. The first one I wear around my neck every day. It's Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But one of the problems that I've had throughout the years is I've got so much faith. Why hasn't God healed me from this? Why hasn't He delivered me from this? And I asked God that for a while, and finally I read 2 Corinthians 12, chapter 12, verse 7 through 9. Or because of these surpassingly great revelations, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And this, I can relate to this probably more than anything else in the Bible, because for one thing, if God would heal me, the way my mind works, my mind is so grandiose at times that I would start thinking it's me that did it. And I would think that I was so great. And God's He's keeping me humble, for one thing. And two, I boast all the time about my weaknesses, because it is only through my weaknesses that I've ever learned that I could help anybody. It's only by letting other people see that I've been there, I've done that, I've been able to work through it. Maybe you can too. It's only been through that I've been able to help anybody. And so, and I do believe the more that I boast about my weaknesses, the more Christ's power rests on me, because, there was a time when I came into early recovery from addiction. I didn't think I had any worth in this world at all, and I came to realize that if I couldn't help one person, I could help another person recovering from addiction. And from there, it just snowballed. And the more I do that, it seems like the more and more God's hand rests on me. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Bill. Kevin.
I've grown up with a huge insecurity in my life, some trauma that happened way back, and I've always felt not accepted. And then now I've gotten into this whole idea of this mental health issue, and Bill hit it on the head. It's something that God gave us to use to help other people. And some of you may feel the same way about some of the things that you deal with, where it might be separating you from God, or maybe He's like, well, let them do what they're doing. I'm going to focus somewhere else. And so my life verse, my verse that I clutch onto is, for I'm persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature, nor my mental health is going to separate me from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So I repeat that daily. I repeat it daily. I'm having a good day, I say it. When I have a bad day, I say it. I just stick to that no matter what happens in the day, no matter what happens moment by moment, it's not going to separate me from Him, because He loved me first. And He drew me out. I'm dead bones. I'm dry bones. I'm dead in sin. He came to me. He breathed life in me. And so He loves me enough exactly where I am. So yes, He could heal me. That's fine. But I'm set knowing that He's not going to ever leave. And so that's where I'm at.
Amen. Thanks, Kevin. Melanie, how about you?
There's 2 things, actually. One is Psalm 27. I memorized it, and different parts of it will come back to me at different times. Another thing is that when I first started counseling, I was very, very unstable, and my counselor had to leave on maternity leave. And there was an intern at the counseling clinic that took over for my counselor, so that I didn't have to be without counseling. And so what we did was we took and studied laments in the Psalms. And at the end of the sessions, then I wrote my own lament. And so there are times when I remember to do this, when I'm overwhelmed. It's a good practice because you really get to pour out your heart to God, but at the same time, you're focused on His goodness and you're focused on His promises, and so that you get to grieve and get lifted up at the same time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next question is in reference to how you have connected with people, either in this church or in your life, who have been a part of your mental health recovery journey and your spiritual growth. Melanie, I'm going to start with you. If you can share whatever you would like about that question.
Well, coming to church in the first place was a terrifying thing for me, and when I did it, I knew I had to jump in with both feet, and so I did. I immediately connected with a small group called Cleansing Stream, and after that, Pastor Dutch had a DNL class, and that's actually where Nicole and I connected, and I've just continued to utilize the small groups, Burr Schilling's class, Pastor's Wednesday night classes, and in that process, you connect with people individually in a more intimate way. And, one of the best parts about it is the worst part. And it's that your failures bump up against other people's failures. But in that process, I have learned a lot about grace and forgiveness, and that one mistake doesn't end the world.
Very good. Thanks, Melanie. How about you, Bill? How have you connected with people, and how has that increased your spiritual journey and your personal recovery?
Well, first ones I connected to here at New Life was the Fedurkas. You know, back when I started coming, Bill Fedurka was running Celebrate Recovery, and he happened to be a coworker of mine, which made it even more convenient. And we were able to connect and share thoughts and stuff. And I can remember I told Bill one time, man, I'd like to be godly like you. And he's like, all you got to do is pray and help as many people as you can. And I've been trying to do that ever since. And also the TGIF group, most of those guys in the TGIF group are older than me, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me. I like being around people with more experience than what I've got. It teaches me. But I've really connected with Gene Wolfe and Bill Schaefer, and I feel like I have people in the church that know me as a person, know exactly who I am and what I'm about, and that really keeps me connected. And then I have to mention Pastor Dutch. After coming to New Life for a while and listening to Pastor Dutch's preaching, I've been around I've gone to a lot of churches. I've been saved in more churches than what I know of. So, but Pastor Dutch is the first one that's ever been able to put this put the Bible in a way that I can understand what he's saying, I understand, and he's changed my perception on a lot of the stuff that I thought that I knew. He's changed my perception on it. You know, I used to wonder about, do we really go to heaven and float around on a cloud playing a harp for the rest of for eternity? And I was so relieved the day Pastor Dutch told me that's not the way it works. But I just I know that Pastor Dutch is the man that I want to teach me how to be a decent Christian, and so this church has made all the difference in my life, and oftentimes the highlight of my week is going to church on Sunday, and I really feel like that's the way. I really feel like that's the way it's supposed to be. I feel like a person's supposed to be in love with their church. If you're not in love with your church, then why are you going to that church? But, I can't tell you that this church has helped me tremendously, both with my mental health and my addiction issues. It's kept me grounded, and it's given me more opportunities to help those around me. So I think I'm going to keep coming back for a while.
Thanks, Bill. One of the things that I think is really interesting that both Melanie and Bill have talked about is small groups and connecting with people one-on-one. Those kinds of things can't happen on Sunday mornings just by virtue of the way a Sunday morning service flows. And it's important to connect with people in a way where you get to know them. And I feel quite unspiritual listening to the way that they've connected, because I was going to say, for me, it was playing bunco with women on the monthly, women's groups. And then once a year, right before Christmas, we would all bring our Christmas presents and wrapping paper, and we would just sit and talk and drink hot cider and wrap our Christmas presents and talked. But, some of those kinds of things, that's where, you get to know the children of the people that you're going to church with, and you get to hear their own funny dog stories, or, just really getting to know one another, because that's how you know who is it that I can trust to call when I'm having a bad day. Okay, Kevin, it's your turn. And we talked a little while before we got to you. So the question was, how have you connected with people in the church, and how has that impacted your journey?
All right, so a little bit of backstory. We've planted and pastored churches for about 20 years while we raised our 4 daughters, adopted a son back in 2014. So that was our ministry life, and we would, as pastors, you're pretty lonely creatures, because a lot of people think, that's the pastor, we don't want to hang out with that guy. So, it's kind of a hard place for me to be, because I like, 74% of the time I'd like to be around people and the other. And so anyway, so for that was a long period of time. So we stepped down from pastoring back in 19, and we took a sabbatical, and our kids all grew up. And in July of 2020, during this pandemic thing, they all moved out. I mean, everybody kind of just got this diaspora you've been talking about. They all kind of just scooted, and they're still close by, but now we're like, it's just us, and we had to decide where we're going to church. We came out and started a CR over in Fostoria, and we came over here one time, and we've met Bill Federica, and he showed us a little bit of how CR runs, and it was just one time. And so when we moved out here to Findlay, from Foster, we had to move out of the parsonage, so we moved over here. I thought, well, we've already been there once. I mean, they might love us to come back. So we came back, and it's just me and my wife, and so to connect with people, we were all wearing masks, and it was the whole pandemic thing, quote unquote, and so it was this whole big, kind of, because we're huggers, and come in and we're all like, do I wear a green bracelet or a red bracelet, or I wasn't even looking at bracelets. I had no idea what to do. And so it was very uncomfortable at first. And so we didn't have that church family so much, but our first service we knew. She grew up in the AG church. I got saved and from the Catholic Church back in when I was 22, 23. And so this whole transition of not being pastoring is a whole new ballgame. We haven't been church members for years. And sometimes you find that as a pastor, you're probably the worst church members. And so I was holding back, not reaching out, but of course my wife was like, hey, we need to get connected. We know how to get connected in a church. So we started contacting people. So it's been a slow process, of course, because of this whole thing that's been going on. But we are getting closer to people, and we're excited to get involved. We're actually just hired a bunch of people so we can maybe take a few minutes off at the end of a day to be able to come over and do things like this, to be a part of what's going on. So we're excited to see where it heads. We're not all the way, we feel like we're in, but we're not connected as we want to be. So be on the lookout. I'll be finding you guys.
Very good. Thanks, Kevin. Can you tell us about a time when a person helped you during a difficult time? And how did they communicate with you in a way that made you feel valued, loved, and accepted as you are? Melanie, we'll start with you. I did skip a question. Sorry. I messed up your notes. I'm looking at the time, and we have 12 minutes left, and I still have 5 questions, and we're definitely not going to get to all of them, so I skipped a question.
Okay, I'm going to draw a parallel because I have a physical health diagnosis, and my friend Jenna, when she found out, she researched it. So when we go on our trips, she knows what to expect, and she's always very thoughtful on our trips about the things that will make me ill. And one of the things that I do very easily is I dehydrate very easily. And so she bought salt tablets to make sure I at least had my electrolytes replenished. And making sure that I don't get overheated and all of that stuff. It just really touched me that she took the time to research it and to incorporate that into our little vacations that we take.
That's very good. So, tip, that means that if you have someone in your life who you care about, or you're getting to know someone, if they have mentioned to you a specific kind of mental health struggle they have, you could do research about it and come to understand what it means and have conversations with them as much as they would like, because that makes them feel like you care about how they experience life. Bill, how about for you?
It'd probably be about 5-6 years ago. I'd gone like 10 or 11 years without a psychotic episode, and then we switched up my medication, and I had a psychotic episode for the first time in forever, and I was having those grandiose thoughts, and I was going off on rants and stuff, and I was going to meetings and going off on rants, 12-step meetings, and going off on rants and stuff. And my sponsor, my best friend, and a coworker reached out to me. They came to my house and checked on me and made sure I was doing okay. And they sat there for an hour and listened to me and realized I wasn't talking in my right frame of mind. And they called the hospital and had me go out to Blanchard Valley to Orchard Hall, and I ended up staying 4 or 5 days there. But my sponsor, he took me out to the hospital, and we must have been back there for 2 or 3 hours. We back in the rooms, back in the emergency room, and he must have sat there for 2 or 3 hours waiting for them to come back and take me up there. And nobody ever made me feel like it was my fault that what was going on was happening. Nobody ever made me feel like I was to blame for what was going on, and I have to give credit to my work also. The mental health agency that I work for, I was scared to death that because I had that psychotic episode, I might lose my job or something. But even they were like, this is just what happened. They realized that it was the switch of medication that caused it, and they didn't see where I was to blame for it either. And you know, for oftentimes, when I had my first psychotic episode in 2000, I was off. I was out there for a lot of years after that, but this time it was different. I had a lot of people supporting me and giving me hope, and I was able to bounce back in a week. So I think it has a lot to do with how people support you and how they connect with you. So I don't know. That's all I got.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, how about you?
I haven't, I'm transparent to a fault, but I haven't talked about this because I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. But one of the things I've noticed through the interaction with my family and my wife is that they see it and they'll give me time with boundaries, but they give me time. And that question that comes up is, what have you been doing? Like I said, I hate it, but I also love it because it helps to bring me back. So that's really where we're at right now, is in that place. We're saying, I'm allowing them to. Of course, I get frustrated at first, and I stomp away, and I say, you don't need to, you're not the boss of me. But literally, she is the boss of me. She owns the business, so I have to, I have to listen to her. But I listen to her out of love, come on, and fear. So we, that whole idea of the family knows, and the family recognizes it. My kids recognize it, and they're adults now, so they can help. And they too suffer with some of their own issues, and so we're all kind of this little group that can really encourage each other and help each other, and sometimes kind of knock us back on track. So,
Thank you. So this last question was, how have people helped us? And earlier, Melanie talked about, sometimes our problems bump up against each other's problems. And so sometimes really good intentioned people do things that make the situation more difficult or harder. And because I know that the majority of the people who are coming to these are coming because they are hoping to have a better understanding of how to love and support people who are living with mental health struggles, I have asked them to share if they have an experience when someone was trying to be helpful, but it actually was not helpful. And, if you hear a story that you feel like is you, please know that we recognize and appreciate and love so much people who are willing to come close, who are willing to take the risk. And so this comes with appreciation and love. Obviously, we're not going to share stories about people's names, but we just wanted to give you some examples. And I'm not 100% sure that we all are going to share, but I am going to start with you, Melanie.
In an effort to be more transparent and to try to connect with people, sometimes I will share things with people that I feel are compassionate people. And sometimes when I do share something, the person will kind of connect with it, and then they'll run off on a story about somebody else who's going through something. And sometimes the person they're describing has much worse conditions, much worse situations, and it can feel sometimes as if, and a lot of times, I know the person that this most recently happened with, I know did not intend anything but to encourage me. But sometimes it feels as if they're saying, see, you're not that bad. Like that video that Nicole showed with the Was that a moose looking down into the hole? It's dark down there. Well, at least it does feel that way. And the reason why I wanted to share this is because it's a kind of a concrete way of saying, well, at least in a way that a lot of people don't think about.
That's a really good example. And one of the things that does when not just people with mental health conditions, but any struggle that you're going through, you've lost a loved one, or you had a pet die, or you're going through a divorce, any kind of struggle, if someone says, well, at least it's not XYZ, or it could be worse, what that is saying, what it feels like is you're not validating how I feel. How I feel is hurt. How I feel is frustrated. Whatever it is that I've just shared, or that, someone has just shared with you, the most important thing is to listen and validate where they're at.
And there's one other component to that. In the process of telling somebody else's story, you might be saying something that is very triggering to the person you're telling the story to. This happens a lot, and am I saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to finish that.
So by triggering, what she means, if you're not really familiar with someone who has experienced trauma, if you listened to my story 2 weeks ago, I shared some examples of some of the traumas that have happened in my life. And if I am talking to you about something that I'm going through, something I'm experiencing, but I haven't brought up any of those traumas, and then you start talking about, well, at least you didn't have this happen to you. Well, yeah, actually I did, and now you just brought that up, thank you. And now I'm going to have nightmares about it tonight. And I may not be able to hug my husband tomorrow morning. And I might not be able to eat for a couple of days. And now I might struggle with drinking again for a little while. So when you trigger someone when you're reminding them of something traumatic, it has such a long-lasting effect, and having supportive people in your life can decrease the amount of time that it takes to bounce back. Like Bill shared, there was a time where he was having these thoughts that didn't make sense for a long period of time, but then the more recent time when it happened, because he has people in his life who are connected to him, they could recognize it, they could help him, they could do something about it, and within a week, he was back to, maybe not 100% normal life, but he was back to mostly his normal life. And so the things that you say can be very powerful, as we all know. You just want to make sure that what you're saying is supportive. And my dad always said, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth because we're supposed to listen more than we talk. Bill, how about you? Do you have an example of something you wanted to share?
This is a long time ago. This is probably about 2005. I went to a church here in town. They were having a revival one weekend, and I participated in the revival. Then on Sunday that evening, they were praying for healing. Well, I went up to the front of the church and asked for them to pray for my healing for my mental disorder. And they didn't want to pray for me. It wasn't because I needed healing. It was lack of faith on my part. It was a lack of faith and sin on my part, and that if I would just surrender to Christ, everything would be okay. And that chased me away from the church for a long time.
Thank you very much, Bill. Kevin, did you have an example you wanted to share?
I don't have an example of that because I don't share. Here's the thing, nobody thinks that I'm that I'm struggling with it, because I don't think I'm struggling with it, because I'm quite outgoing and fun and happy, and yeah, I come down. My lows aren't as low as my highs are high. So I'm the life of the party. I love being, like I said, I love being around people. So I haven't had anybody really say, "Hey, that guy's got a problem," because they're like, "Man, that guy has 17 grills and he cooks every type of food on each grill," literally. And
When are you having a cookout?
yeah, well, now it's the Blackstone. I fixated on Blackstone. I cook 5 pounds of bacon every Sunday night. Yeah. And then Monday, I need more bacon. And then, anyway, so, yeah, no one, like I said, no one triggers me. And so I don't have a real good example of that being a problem.
That is fine, thank you. What do you want people to know about supporting someone who lives with mental health issues? Melanie.
It's okay to ask questions, and it's okay not to have any answers. And as a matter of fact, it's preferred. Sometimes being helped by somebody who is trying to learn is more helpful than actually being helped. The other thing I would suggest, and Pastor Dutch would suggest, is that you read boundaries. Because it's really important to be able to have healthy boundaries for you. But for me, if I know somebody's boundaries, then I don't have to guess. I don't have to wonder. I know when I can and when I can't. And it takes a lot of the anxiety out of relating to people.
Very good, thanks. Bill, how about you? What do you want people to know?
Never give up hope. There was a time when people didn't think that I was gonna ever get any better, and all it took was for God to turn on the light bulb, and I started doing. I'm probably the healthiest I've been my entire life, probably. All it takes is for God. No matter how bad the person seems, all it takes is for God to say the word, and it's changed at that point. So never give up hope.
Hope, very, very important. Kevin, what do you want people to know?
Patience. In my life, it's a constant race. And so to have patience with me and know that it'll come back down, and then you can help me. Anyone you're dealing with any kind of mental health, but especially bipolar, that goes up and down and up and down, you just have to recognize that it's happening. And a lot of the times it's not just talking or saying something. The comfort will be in just being around. In my life, I don't have friends, because if you're out of sight, I don't think about you. I'm on to the next squirrel. And so a lot of people in the past I'd love to connect with, and I think I'm connected with them because I have all my friends on Facebook, and I think because I can see their fun pictures. But it's something that I would say to you is that if you feel slighted by somebody with a mental health issue, know that it's probably not personal. It's probably just something that they're dealing with, and that if you feel like they've moved on from you, all it takes is you'd say, well, the phone goes 2 ways. Yeah, it does. But when I'm out chasing squirrels and deer, it'd be nice to get a call, to help me come back into reality. So I'm just saying, have patience, but also be flexible, because it can be very destructive. What I have is a very destructive mix, and it can hurt a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. This is the last question. How have you found purpose in the midst of your struggles and diagnoses? I believe that for many people, the hope and transformations comes when they find purpose in the midst of the challenges, and then those values transform the way that we live. Tell me what that has looked like for you. Melanie.
Well, things like this, for one thing. That's an opportunity to create a bridge a bridge between other people struggling with mental health issues so that they have someone who gets it, a bridge to people who want to help people who struggle with mental health issues, and hopefully be somebody that if you're one of those people that you could come to and talk to about questions or concerns or things that you might have, and to educate. It gives me an opportunity to take my experiences and use them to help people. I think that's a lot of it.
Okay, thanks. How about you, Bill?
I find purpose in my story.
Yeah.
You know, when Nicole asked me to do this, she told me how amazed she was at my willingness to share my story. Well, my story is the purpose God's given me, and I'm always willing to share that, whether it's on mental illness or addiction or life in general. Oftentimes all it takes is for someone to hear your story and see that they've been where you are, and that you got through it. Okay, maybe they can too, and I also find purpose in the 12-step recovery community, and for myself, it all goes back to 2 Corinthians. I find purpose in the fact that I have probably lived one of the most challenging lives of anybody I know, and God's allowing me to make it through it okay. And oftentimes when I think back, there was a time I went through. There's 10 years of my life where I was totally psychotic. I never thought I was going to get any better, and I oftentimes compare myself to the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. God pulled me through my own wilderness, and it's important for me to be able to share that and share that God will pull you through that wilderness if you just let him. So that's all I got.
Very good, Bill. Kevin?
That's awesome that you just said he's going to pull you through that. I mentioned that we moved across the country several times to plant churches and work with churches. And it seemed to be every 24 to 26 months. And so we've recognized that my cycle, my larger visionary cycle is about 2 years. And then I shift to something else and we move back and forth, Chicago and California, and finally end up out here. But that's helped me in my higher points of my mental health is I'm very creative and I can start things. I'm not a great manager. I've already mentioned that. I can't even keep a calendar, but I can start things. And so when Techie was ready to start our business, I'm all in, let's get it going. And we're at that point, we're just a little over 2 years, and I'm like, okay, I need to work myself out of a job because I'm going to run this place into the ground. So we started hiring people to come in. So my purpose is to start things. God showed me that, and I can do it for a good solid 2 years. That's where you need to start developing people in that 2 years. And so I recognize that, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And that's what he's given me so far.
Very good. So what I would like to sort of close with as we're wrapping up is you have heard about the importance of connecting with individual people at a deeper than how are you this morning level. And you've heard about finding purpose in your story. And I am so incredibly grateful that Kevin was the last one to answer that question, because the thing that I was going to talk about is how for most people, if they have a mental health challenge or illness and they can get to a healthy point, they are able to recognize some strengths that they have specifically because of the mental illnesses. And I am really interested in connecting with people, helping them understand and find their values, their value in life, their purpose in life, because that is what makes such a big difference in the journey of recovery. Whether it's recovery from addiction or mental health illnesses, or if it is you're grieving the loss of someone, or going through a divorce, or you've just moved across the country and you don't have friends. There are so many different struggles that happen in life, and I think that a lot of people can connect with pieces of the stories that people who live with mental illness have. I would say the important thing to keep in mind if you are going to make that connection is maybe you keep that connection to yourself, because that is very different than a clinical diagnosis, which we all have expressed that we have. And so there is a difference. However, you can probably understand a piece of it because of some of the story that you've lived. So if you are in need of prayer or want to talk to someone, I am going to stick around afterwards. If you're listening online, you can connect with us through the Brain Trust on discovernewlife.com. And I am going to close us out in prayer. I welcome you, encourage you to come back to church on Sunday morning at 9 or 11, in person or online. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night and this time. And Lord, I thank you for Melanie and Bill and Kevin being willing to be so vulnerable and share their story and to share the hope of life with mental illness with you in it. And Lord, I thank you for the way that you use us and the way you connect us with other people and the way that you have given us all purpose. We praise you and we thank you for all of these things. In your name, amen. Thank you. Have a good evening.